Assalamu alaikum. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again in HIPA lecture. And today's lecture is sponsored by Canon. And we have today the fashion photographer, Clinton Lubbe. Exactly. Okay, as usual, ladies and gentlemen, we will have total of 3 hours lecture, including questions and answers, and break, and including distributing the certificates. Please don't leave at the end of the lecture, because we will have a voting, small voting event for the best winner of the 5 winners in Instagram, and we need you today to be our jury. Okay? Yeah, don't forget to share our live stream link. It's on YouTube if you wish to send it to someone who couldn't make it to come today. And enjoy the lecture.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome from myself. I can speak Afrikaans, but I don't think anyone else in the room can speak Afrikaans. So other than that, unfortunately, I'm limited to English. Please feel free to stop me at any time. If there's any questions about any of the images, the methods, the thoughts, the rationale, anything like that, we're here to share information. I'm not here to stand up and lecture to you. I like to share photography. Okay, so tonight's topic, we're talking about fashion. We'll have a quick rundown. We're going to go through Fashion 101, which is just a short breakdown of fashion. Then we'll look at fashion with one light. I try to aim this at all levels of photographers. So we'll go through using one single light. We'll go through using available light. And we'll also go through fashion portraiture as a genre, because I think a lot of people sometimes get intimidated by fashion. Portraiture is interesting, and there are ways of combining these genres and really getting good value out of that. Okay, so Fashion 101, we're quickly going to run through camera and lens, then genre, style, how fashion makes you feel is very important, because that's almost the crux of fashion. Fashion is wardrobe, and how you feel wearing that wardrobe. How does it make the person feel? That's why you'll see in a lot of commercial advertisement, either there's a very upbeat, or someone's very serious and heavy-moneyed, or various moods are dictated through the way you shoot, and the all-important directing, communication within the studio. Okay, so with 101, we'll start off with the gear. Can I get a short indication over here of sort of the levels of work? How many of you are practicing professionals that make a living out of shooting photography? So it's a good handful. And all of us obviously enjoy photography. So this was not my first published image, but it was my first image published in, or my first story published in our country, South Africa's biggest monthly women's fashion publication. The gentleman on the left-hand side, he was a contestant in the Survivor television series. He didn't win it, but he was the best-looking person on it, so all of the news always happened around him. But that was shot on a 5D camera, the first full frame that Canon offered us, that I started shooting and really fell in love with that series of cameras. Okay, we've lost the screen. Ah, okay. There's somewhere over here where you stand that switches it off. The cursed spot. Okay. So that was shot with the very first 5D full frame. And the thing is, before digital, photographers were shooting film, whether it's Richard Avedon or any of the greats, on much older cameras. No one was worried about the latest equipment. So this is just a quick rundown on, don't worry about the gear. The lens that I used in the shot, 85mm lens, I still shoot it today. That was back in 2006. On all of my images, I'll probably have a quick rundown over there of the type of lighting that's used in the image. So if anyone has a quick question, this is more about photography, less about sort of a lighting lecture, but anyone with quick questions about lighting, happy to indulge that, okay? So scrimming over here, basically the whole garden, put up 4 posts, screen the whole top of the garden, and then put light back into it. Take it all out and put it all back in. Okay, so still shooting that camera today. All right, camera and lens. The 5DS is designed for fashion. That is what I shoot today. The sensor on the camera is your film. Those of you, how many of you have shot film? Anyone? Yeah? 1 person in the audience that's shot film. 2. Okay, 3. I grew up with film, and I was quite lucky. My dad had a shop, and they sold a few rolls of film, and I would always go there, and they had different colors. I think that's what attracted me first, was the different colors of the film, and then I would try that one and try that one. And so from a young age, I got to know that they'll give you different results. The sensor in your camera offers you exactly the same. That is why I chose 5DS. For me, it's a beautiful type of film. All right, so irrespective of what camera and what sensor you're shooting, I would just encourage you to shoot RAW. That would probably be the main thing to take out of it, irrespective of cameras and lenses, shooting RAW, the ability to produce a black and white image afterwards and to really create vivid, stunning color images. Please, always shooting RAW. Okay, so in lenses, my typical lens is an 85 millimeter. That's generally a kind of a correct portrait length. I shot that for many years. I think I probably went through about 10 years of my career where I refused. I loved that lens so much I refused to shoot anything else. And only later, as I started mellowing and getting a little bit older, did I start learning to shoot shorter focal lengths. So that particular is that tall. And I believe not all the actors that you see on the action movies screens are that tall either. A lot of them are just as short as me. Your angles are incredibly important. Your lenses are incredibly important. I'm so sorry. I'm going to stand still. All right, so 35 millimeter lens. I've really learned to love this lens for its storytelling power. Obviously, the wider you go, the more of the scenery that you're including. So when you want to tell a story about someone, whether it's a man and the house that he lives in, whether it's a fashion model going down to a beach. This was photographed in Australia, down in Melbourne on the Great Ocean Road. And the scenery there in the background, that's one of the 12, what they call the 12 apostles, which is sandstone structures. And the sea's busy eroding them. And some pieces of them are falling and disappearing. So for me, it was important, if I'm going all the way there, I need to see that. That's a part of the story. So that's me in a nutshell. 5DS, 35mm lens, 50mm lens, and 85mm lens. That's how I enjoy to shoot most of my work. Do you have a question? No? But then this happened recently. I'm assuming everyone's shooting all kinds of brands. I shoot Canon myself. Obviously, everyone shoots everything else. So for me, we've just taken the step into mirrorless. Now, I'm just going to have just a quick rundown of mirrorless and where that's going to, because it's changed. I'm not moving. It's changed me as a photographer. Go back there and see if we're going. So I think this was probably one of the first fashion shoots, definitely the first fashion shoot shot with Canon Mirrorless in the UAE, and also one of the first in the world. It's almost, I think it's almost finished. You want to let it run until the end of the video? Almost. We're just going to change a cable quickly over here. The reason why I wanted to show you that is because it's a completely new system and a new technology for Canon. Now, when film came around, a lot of us film shooters, when film was still around and digital came over, a lot of film shooters was, I'm not going to shoot digital. So for me, with mirrorless, I've sort of had that attitude that I'm happy with my DSLR. That's what I want to shoot with, and I'm not too interested in mirrorless. And they said, well, you know, just go ahead, try it. Okay, are we changed over? Let's see. I'm just going to restart this quickly. Okay, there we go. Go ahead and try it. And so it's just to reinforce the idea. No, that's not happening. It's just to reinforce the idea that your equipment, it's not like wildlife photography or sports photography where you need very specific cameras and you need very specific lenses. Your equipment, irrespective of what you've got, fashion, you can get into fashion without too much restrictions from your equipment. So the other thing about that shoot is introducing me to the mirrorless technology now. I've always refused to shoot anything but prime lenses. My 85, my 50, and my 35, that's it, khalas. Yesterday, see, I have picked up one word so far while I'm here. Yesterday was the very first time in my career that I've ever shot a zoom lens on a work shoot. I shot the 24-105 yesterday. So I suppose it's just an indication that old men can change. I did miss my prime lenses, but I must say it wasn't a big issue for me to be shooting the 24-105. That's one of the results. What I did enjoy about the 24-105, so here we were up in the Imperial Suite at the Waldorf in Rasselheimer. What I did really enjoy about shooting the zoom, and the reason why I've been trying now to shoot mirrorless, is to try and treat myself a little bit differently. I've always sort of had the opinion that I have my assistant, I have my equipment, there's 10 bags that come with me, and it's quite a slow process. And I've been negative and I've been resisting mirrorless for so long and sort of a non-professional attitude, but the world has changed so much. And content creators are moving fast, they're moving light, and they're creating great content out there. And I think I was sort of maybe leaving myself behind. So that's typically 105 millimeters, and that is at the other end on 24 millimeters. So that I did appreciate of using a zoom for the first time. I'm all excited like a little boy in a candy store using zooms for the first time, that I can stand there and get two completely different results. Usually I've got two bodies with different lenses, but not everything is accommodated. So it got me out of some tight spots. Now, in fashion, what's correct and what's incorrect? Who in the room prefers the longer, more formal perspective? And the wider perspective? It's completely subjective. Fashion's completely subjective. What I do find, though, is that, especially with Instagram and with sharing stories today, where should I? I'm going to try and stand on this side for a while. I have all of my notes over there, though, so I might forget some of my notes. Okay. So with Instagram, I think the perspective of a wide lens is a lot more interesting because we're telling a lot more story. That's my little boy. It was a charity project where he was dressed up as a superhero. So to just encourage people, instead of asking people for donations for a refugee cause, it was just a photographic exercise where the children were the superheroes for the day. Okay. All right, so nothing too exciting about this, just 24mm lens compared to 105mm lens. Whatever it is that you feel comfortable telling your fashion stories with, that's what you're using. There's no strict rules like wildlife or sports. So this was just an idea. I'm shooting like a content creator now. I've got absolutely no staff, just all on my own, running around. Is it going to be easier if we put them on the TV? Are there any questions so far? Any stories that anyone wants to tell? No? Okay. So we'll carry on with this in a second. That video, that was basically to show I'm used to being tethered and to having 2 or 3 assistants, having a client, having a coffee station, having all of that kind of stuff. That's kind of the environment that you're used to. But this experience for me, this was just yesterday. So all of the shots that you're seeing from that, it's all unretouched. sorry about this. I'm sure we'll sort it out soon. All of the shots you're seeing from this, it's quite unretouched. So it's not advertising agency standards or anything like that. It's using a very basic entry-level camera, that new Canon camera. It is sort of a mid-range camera. It's not supposed to be a high-end professional camera. It's a good, solid mid-range camera. So the results that you're seeing from that we hopefully will be seeing from that, it's all just everyone that's at home can achieve those results with whatever equipment you got. All right.
So those two shots we were saying, the wide one and the narrow one, which one you prefer?
I've always liked the compressed perspective myself, but more and more I understand. If you on the top floor in the Imperial Suite of the Waldorf, you want to show a little bit of that view, you know? So it's about the storytelling. And I think what I've got used to now with my fashion stories is that I'll use both. I'll try to tell a little bit of story and also come in and focus on the more, I think the compressed perspective with the longer lens, it's a more traditional approach. You know, if you go and read the books, they'll always tell you you don't shoot a portrait under 85 millimeters. You know, don't distort anyone. Don't do this. Don't do that. So there's a whole lot of set rules. But I think combining those two, for me, absolutely happy with that. Yes, ma'am.
For a model shoot,
Yes.
what do you prefer? Balanced control light in indoors or natural available light in the outdoors? What is more?
It depends on the story that's being told. Each person, each story, and each publication will obviously have their set of rules. But if I'm doing lifestyle, the one thing I will always try to do with my lighting is use as little light as possible. Because for me, the intellectual Susan Sontag, she wrote a book, I think, back in the 70s, The Philosophy of Photography. And in that book, she spoke about photography as being voyeuristic, which it is. You pick up a camera, you put it to your face, and you walk around and you observe people and you try not to disturb them. And I think for me, that's the beauty, still the beauty of photography, is watching life unfold around you. So when there's too much lighting, then my mind automatically knows that that situation has been contrived for me. It's not a real situation, so I don't believe it, so I don't live it emotionally. And I think photography is supposed to be an emotional experience. So for me, for that reason, that's why I'll choose to use as little light as possible. A lot of the time, I'll be balancing light. I'll use what available light there is, and then I'll just open up the shadows, clean things up with a little bit of full light, unless, of course, it is a studio shoot. That's specifically a studio shoot. That's also fantastic. Yes, sir. Absolutely nothing and absolutely nothing. Look, I see the advantages of the new system, but as for the Canon brand, it is still a young system. I believe in buying into a system. I've shot Canon my entire career. I've never moved off of it. I've never looked at anything else because I've always had fantastic support. I've never had equipment break down on me. It's always reliable. As a hard-working pro, you can't get into a situation and have something break down on you. And I've never experienced that, so I've never found the need to move away from it. What did I gain? I think what I gained was maybe just a shift of mindset in that it's not that bad to travel light, because I can see I'm going to enjoy the EOS R. For clients have different requirements today. It's not like 10 years ago where a client came to you with a brief and they said that they had a certain budget for that brief, and then, the process took a week or two or a month in evolving the process, and then you executed the process. Today, a client calls you up and says, we've got a job, can you do it? And you go and do the job, and before you've even arrived home, the client's on the phone saying, have you sent scamps yet? Have we got we need to get it up onto social media. Is it done? So, if the world's evolving and your clients are evolving that fast, I think that's what I'm getting out of Mirrorless. There's good video, there's good stills, and on certain jobs, lighter and easier. What you're getting from that shorter flange distance is a complete redesign of the lenses, which apparently allows more space. I'm not the most technical person, but it allows more space for lens design and rear elements at the back, which, with the evolution, provides us with better quality. So I think we'll see those advantages coming through. So shooting down on the floor, up in the air, over balconies, I think that's probably what I gained from it. So as I said, I'm not used to working like that at all. Completely new experience for me. I quite enjoyed it. So moving out of lenses, is there any last equipment questions in terms of lenses, focal lengths, gear, anything like that? So we're moving on to genres then. What I find incredibly necessary in photography is that people educate themselves according to genre. If you follow things on Facebook, you'll see every second or third photographer saying, I shot fashion today. And I look at it and that's not fashion. And I think it's not a criticism of the work that the person's doing, they're misunderstanding what they're doing. Fashion is a very broad genre. Within fashion, you have high fashion, you have commercial lifestyle fashion, you have beauty, you have fitness, you have swimwear, you have 50 different genres. And unless you going into your shoot knowing exactly what aspect of the genre you're looking for, you're not going to know how to light it. So something like this, which is commercial lifestyle fashion. It's just a soft fashion editorial in just a sort of mid-sized ladies magazine about this celebrity figure. So I'm not going to go and hit her with hard lights in studio and try and make her glamorous. She's supposed to be the lady next door. Okay, she's supposed to be the lady next door. So with something like that, you're interpreting the needs and the person, and you're just using softer, more available light. So something like this is taking it one step further. This lady is a movie star, so you can almost feel celebrity in this image. It's a little bit more polished and a little bit more movie star than the previous image. So in something like this, what I'm looking at is just balancing the light. I'm using the available light and then putting in a touch of flash just to open her up. So to balance light on these commercials, this is a very typical, almost Vanity Fair type of editorial, slightly polished but not overdone. You still feel the lifestyle, and there's not enough studio, so we still believe her. So with this type of thing, I'll always firstly go for that you see on the shoulder and running around. I'll have a look at the environmental light in the room first and expose for that, and then, okay, this doesn't show up on the screen, and then afterwards I'll put the flash in from the front to fill in with that. So from commercial, a lot of the trends then will filter down to wedding photography, general photography that unpublished photographers will do. All of your trends will come from commercial fashion. All right, so that is now high fashion. Now, high fashion is not commercial fashion. The word high fashion comes from haute couture. Haute couture, initially, to be a couturier in France, you had to have an atelier, a studio, and you had to have at least 15 employees, and you had to put out at least 2 collections a year, and your wardrobe was not in the shops. It was all custom made and custom designed for the person and fitted to the person. So that's the original definition of high fashion or haute couture. Because of that, you've got a completely different audience. So commercial fashion caters to the masses, where high fashion is the very select and sophisticated client. So it changes. Your commercial fashion will be very broadly lit, very easily understood. Commercial fashion pretty much tells you what to think. In most advertising, I mean, we're all grown-ups now. We know that advertising just tells us what to think and sells to us the whole time and sells to us the whole time, whereas high fashion is completely different. It asks you to think. So that's why you'll see a lot of the time in a Vogue magazine, especially Italian Vogue, they're notorious for that. You'll look at an editorial and you won't understand it. They're asking you to think. They're asking you to become more involved. They're assuming that you're a more sophisticated client. Okay, so depending on the wardrobe, so wardrobe like this, it's not accidental, the lighting and the wardrobe and the pose. To show off the folds in the middle of the fishtail around the waist, the model had to lean backwards so that it fell open. So a lot of your posing in fashion photography will be dictated, especially in high fashion, will be dictated by the wardrobe. Okay, the light coming from behind on the back, the dress had a very open back, so the client wanted to accentuate that feature. So the lighting's on the back, accentuating that feature from behind. Probably my favorite lighting setup in the studio. Simple, small, one light, 60 by 90, grid on it, very focused light to give me very good contrast lines, very crisp shadows and highlight separation in the studio with that. Okay, so that again, a lot of people might post something like that and say, I'm shooting fashion. It's not fashion. That's beauty. And why it's important to know these things is, now that you're shooting beauty, it's about skin texture. It's about makeup. Have you got the correct makeup artist? You can't just ask your friend to do it if you're starting to shoot beauty now. You need to pay more attention to different aspects of your work and the lighting of your work. That's just a window light. Everyone says that beauty, you've got to have so many soft boxes and this size of soft box, and you've got to have this and you've got to have that. That's just a window light. Beautiful soft window light. The window is facing, I'm shooting from outside through the window, and it's on the shadow side of the house. So soft light, increased ISO, it's very, very soft, but you don't need all of the fancy lighting gear to execute a decent beauty shot. Okay, so beauty isn't fashion, but it can be fashionable. You can still express with it. I think I see a lot on social media platforms that people get kind of stuck in a repetitive and expected beauty shot. You can be completely unexpected and still be more expressive. So something like this would be more of a fashionable beauty shot. What kind of mood do you get out of that? It feels a bit more exciting, maybe. It feels a little bit like nighttime. It's got some emotion in it compared to a very standard beauty shot that's just about makeup application. So that's bringing fashion into beauty. Okay. That on the top there again, it's still beauty, but it's more skincare. Immediately we feel skincare from that, and not just specific beauty. So they're just within those three. I hope that's starting to open your eyes up to how important it is to know and recognize genre and what specific area of that genre you're working in, because that's all beauty, but it's completely different beauty. So for those of you who are maybe hoping to do something like this professionally, that's all about communicating with your client. and knowing what the expected result is from your client to be able to execute and put your stamp onto something with the client. So what in this image for you makes it skincare? Any answers there? Yeah. So I think you pretty much hit it. Well, that's what was in my head. There's no rights or wrongs over here. But in my head, when I thought of skincare, I thought, okay, put her into the sun. Skincare is more about protecting the skin rather than making up the skin. So for that reason, it's still, it's me. My villa number is 786. I thought that's supposed to be very lucky for me. So putting her into the sun, and that's not in the sun, that's in the studio. So what I'm doing over there, I'm projecting in the background a lot of the time, and I think that's very applicable to the UAE. I developed that technique because coming from South Africa, the budgets are so small and the clients don't want to travel and they don't want to send a crew of 10 people. So I started really working hard at developing my projection techniques. So something like this, we live inland, and to take a crew of 10 people is really expensive. So I need to get answers for my clients. So I'm projecting in the background and just an open head flash that's really raw and quite harsh on her so that it feels like sun. And you'll probably notice on her skin, it looks a little bit rough. That's just a little bit of sort of sea sand touch onto it, just to add a little bit of that mood to it. Okay, so moving out of beauty, let's go into fashion, to fitness. So fitness is another genre that's in recent years become wildly popular in the fashion industry. Why? Because everyone needs to make money. So all of a sudden fitness has become fashion. Everyone's wearing an Adidas tracksuit or a Nike or something like that. So fitness is also fashion. But within fitness and fashion, as much as for beauty, you need to know what you're shooting. Sometimes I'll be shooting a campaign that's maybe for a fitness studio and they're not so interested in the wardrobe, so it's focused more on body movement and less on wardrobe. Sometimes you'll be shooting for a youth culture magazine. So something like that is very much for youth culture magazine. You got all the right branding and all the right moods. It's a very young, vibrant image. And then other times it'll be more about the sweat and the actual physical act of fitness. As much as all of that, can swimwear be fashion? Most swimwear that I see, it's pretty boring because we've seen it so many times over the years. A lady wearing far too little clothing lying on a beach. It's not fashion, it's swimwear. That's a completely different genre altogether. But what I do like to do with swimwear is I'll usually dress the swimwear up. I'll bring a jacket in. I'll bring a pair of heels in. You'll bring a hat in. I'll bring fashion elements into what I'm shooting over there to make it more, I love fashion. I won't go and make a living out of shooting swimwear or something like that, but fashion for me, if I can add fashionable elements in, that's what I'm interested in, is telling the story about society's mood at that time. There's been no questions about lighting yet. Please feel free to stop me if you have any questions about any of the lighting in the images. At any point, that's why I'm here, to help with information. Okay, so finding your own style. So something like this, I think I'm a little bit more of a purist when it comes to photography, and I'm maybe a little bit of a snob when it comes to photography. I like more artistic photography. I try to spend as little time as possible pursuing commercial photography outside of obviously work scenarios where I'm working for my clients. Most of the time, it'll be a little bit more artistic what we're doing. Okay, so finding your own style. I think one of the traps that people fall into with fashion photography is that they try to imitate, which is fine. Everyone needs to get started, but I think people start killing their creativity by looking at magazines and following a favorite photographer or a favorite magazine, and the whole time trying to imitate that. And that's okay to learn a few things, but somewhere inside of you, you need to start recognizing your own style. And that's a very important step in fashion. For anyone that's hoping to do fashion as a profession, a magazine's not going to book you a lot when you look the same as everyone else. Then they might as well book the next person who's coming in at slightly cheaper rate. They're booking you for your style and what you bring that's unique to that work. So defining your style is incredibly important for that. There's nothing wrong with admiring their work. Yes, ma'am.
Picture, the lighting that is there on the curve of the body,
Yes?
it's due to the softbox, or have we done the processing that?
No, that's due to the softbox and the material. It was quite a shiny material. It was a very beautifully elegant material, and it seemed to just pick up the light beautifully. Oops, sorry. Pressed the wrong button. Picked up the light beautifully on the shoulder over there.
So where do we place the light to get this kind of?
So with this over here, I'm coming obviously from quite high up. There's your clues under the chin. I love a jawline. And one of my favorite friends from all the years, I've worked with him for about 25 years now. He's getting a little bit older and he's got a chin underneath here. And he would always beat it into me. Clinton, you never, ever shoot me from below my eyes. You're always above my eyes. And the light must always come from on the top so that it casts a bit of a shadow so that it's a little bit kinder under the jawline. So I think that's something that I've sort of adopted over the years is the light would be on this above her eye line. So the bottom of my light, probably maybe from the nose, because on a 60 by 90 you're about that size, the main part of your light's there, so it's coming from just above the head for that. But the thing about this light, we'll go into it a little bit later. There is a specific on this shoot that we'll talk about the lighting over there. So my style of work is an editorial fashion style. These are things that you would need to go and look up and just research a little bit more on genre when you're finding your style. So I think what an editorial style is about is that I'm a storyteller. That's what I like to do. So an editorial is a spread that will be over 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 pages. So that allows me enough time to create a story and to have an opening page, usually a double-page spread, that maybe sets a scene, and then you go into it and you tell more story throughout the whole images. So that's an editorial photographer. There will always be mood, something like this, this foreground element over here. That's, I'll do that very often in my work. If I'm busy shooting, I'll just break off a leaf or something like that and hide behind it, because it just adds a layer of separation between you and the person. If there's no layer of separation for me personally, then you're very accessible and you become normal. You know, as soon as someone's very accessible to you, they become the normal. You're used to them. So just to add a slight bit of mystique to the person, I have one there. I think there is a photograph of her later on in here. She's our country's most famous soap star. And this shot is probably the only shot that I've ever shot of her from straight in front of her. The rest of the time, I've always been removed through people and deliberately been 20 meters away from her, because I always wanted to project that image of her that she's untouchable, that she's so far away. And it adds a lot to the storytelling, that layer of voyeurism. Yes, sir? I'll do a lot of research. I'll always know a lot about whoever I'm shooting. I'll try and as much information as I can find out. I think that number one is critical, to have a good understanding of that person that you're shooting. I will always tell my clients. So this is for a very big women's magazine title, but my client understands that when I'm on set, that's my client over there. That face over there, I'm doing everything to protect and to promote that face. So the client will come with their set of needs or demands of what they would like to do, and then I'll consider that in relation to the client. And sometimes there will be situations where I'll go to the person that's in front of the camera and I'll be honest with them and I'll say, listen, client wants this, but I'm not going to do that. It's not very nice. A lot of the time they want people to smile, especially in commercial shots, big smiles. When you smile, it makes creases and things, and it's not the most attractive thing to do. So we'll build an understanding between all of us of what's permissible and what's not permissible, what the client wants and what I've researched of that client. And then as far as ideas and concepts are concerned, it'll be influenced by seasons. This was shot in the middle of winter in South Africa. So obviously when you're shooting for a summer publication, the production is done beforehand. And fantastically brave lady, she didn't moan at all. I think the water probably must have been about 8 or 10 degrees or something like that. Very professional. She didn't have any problems with it. She was in the water, a bee stung her, she had no problems. So yeah, seasons will influence it also. A lot of the time it'll be in relation to, have they got business ventures coming up? Why are they in the publication? Most of the time there's a reason why they're in the publication. Most of the time it's to promote a movie. So many factors will help you determine what you're trying to do there. Okay, so I think something like this probably comes closer to expressing editorial fashion. It's a very European style of shooting, especially with the black and white. It's a lot more artistic and it's a lot more European fashion magazine, but that's true editorial fashion. Yes, sir. How do I find my styling? In terms of the wardrobe in the shoots, or what? Yes. Emotions. Clients that have worked with me for a very long time know that they don't give me pictures as reference. They give me words. So there's a fantastic book called The Emotional Thesaurus. I learned about that book, Emotional Thesaurus. I learned about that book through filmmaking. Unfortunately, in photography, I don't think photographers get as well educated as filmmakers, because it's a much bigger process to tell a story over the space of a film. So the education in that process is a lot more intense. And through that, I discovered this book, The Emotional Thesaurus, and I'll ask my clients, what is the mood of this person? Are we happy? Are we sad? Tell me a little bit about the character that you're creating. You know, is it someone that's recently gone through heartache? So does it create a bittersweet emotion? So I'll start with a palette of emotions, and I'll usually ask my client for 3 emotions. And from those 3 emotions, then I will start evolving a story for the client, or together with the client. But I think it's all emotionally based, because that's the intent of fashion, is that the original intent of fashion is, how does this piece of wardrobe make me feel? So it's about mood and emotion. And I think most of the time then you find your path through those key words of what this person's experiencing. And then that's all in pre-production, so I'll go and I'll write a whole story out. I'll write a list of the shots. I'll have everything planned down to the last detail before the shoot. So fashion starts where your needs end. Coco Chanel, don't take it too seriously. Have fun with it. I think that's the key to it. So I'm going to risk coming back here because that wasn't working so successfully on that side. So how does fashion make you feel? Something like this, the designer called it the Queen Lear coat. So I found the shortest model that I could. So that plinth over there, that's probably about that tall. So the model was maybe 5'1" or 5'2", something like that. And the ladies around her, you can see, just standing there without that, she's almost as tall. So this was all about just this woman being a queen, being looked after, taken care of, being dressed. That was the mood that the fashion designer wanted to convey over there. So this is the lady that I was talking about earlier on, the big soap star. Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Yeah. So the difference between the two, if I decide before a shoot that, and with a lot of editorial work, I don't want to make eye contact. In filmmaking, often if you're watching sort of big Hollywood blockbusters or most films, the actors never look straight at the camera. They never make contact with you as the viewer, because you as the viewer are sitting there. If you are to believe a story, you need to not be a part of the story. And as soon as they're looking at you, they're involving you and pulling you into it, and it's not believable anymore. Then it's not that make-believe world. So that's why you'll have a few television stories where they call it breaking the fourth wall, where they look straight back at the camera, mostly comedies or situations like that. But in big movies, they'll never look at the camera. That's the golden rule on a film set, is you never, ever look at the camera. That's then determined beforehand. So usually what happens is when there's a hard sell to be made, if it's quite simple fashion, then they'll look you straight in the eye and they're saying, buy this. When we're asking you to think more about a product, then you sit there and you're observing these people. Do I want to live like that? Do I want to wear those clothes? So it depends on...
It's like a commercial and high-end.
Yeah.
Seeing eyes and not seeing.
Very much. And I will always, before a shoot, I will have determined that. We'll know what story it is, and then we'll discuss it beforehand, and throughout the whole shoot, you're never making eye contact, or you are. So this with her, straight into the camera, it's very unretouched. She eventually decided, you know what, don't retouch me. Don't do any of that. I just want to be me, because she's almost 70 years old here. And for a whole life, she's always been retouched and made up and all of that kind of stuff. And she wanted to do, it was sort of a, let me live a little moment. She's quite crazy. She's a very big personality, this lady. And I think that comes out, that attitude comes out in the clothes and the wardrobe, her look, her pose, everything has been engineered to convey that message. When she said to me, don't retouch me, don't want to see any of that. I just want to I want to shock them. So everything about it is designed to be slightly uncomfortable, slightly outside of the box. Okay, so how do I make you feel? A lot of fashion photography and a lot of art over the years has always involved social commentary. And I think that's one of the great freedoms of art, is to be able to make social commentary, to say something about the state of world events, political events, social events, economic events. People say things about the state of the world. So when I first started following this man called Donald Trump and seeing what he was up to and the crazy things he was suggesting and all of it, and it just didn't make sense. And this image over here was my reaction to experiencing all of his craziness. This was my version of Trump's America. It feels a little bit Mexican, which was a little bit of a humor in it, but he's wild. You don't know what to expect from him. You don't know where it's going to next. It's very unexpected. It's very crazy, and it's very in your face. So that's social commentary about that. There's a story. I forget the name of the painter, but he was a painter to the court of the Spanish king. And when Spain had a revolution, I think it was in the 1500s or the 1600s, and the king that came in and took over really enjoyed this painter's work, but the painter didn't like the new king at all, but he stayed on because the king commanded him to stay on. Yes, sir? Yes, yes, yes. All very purposely, all very chaotic, all very deliberate. There's nothing that's not deliberate. It's projected. We're not in the Arizona desert. Everything's incredibly deliberate to just be not as it should be. Slightly uncomfortable. Something's wrong. Something's wrong. So this artist, only years, centuries later, when we had the ability to study art a lot better, and they looked at this artist's work, they realized that the king, in his previous works, was in a certain position. With the new king, in all of his work, he was back by a few meters. He was distancing himself from this king in his paintings. So you'll see that's a lot of fashion photography. You talk about social situations. You talk about what's going on in the world. It needs to be relevant. If it's not relevant, people page past it very quickly, and you start forgetting it. So that's part of fashion photography. If you choose to move into that area, it's fun to have social commentary. Yes, yes, ma'am. The tree? Yeah, tree. Where's the tree? Oh, those are all tassels on his Mexican jacket that's going all over the place. Composition again. The main thing about rules is that photography, you have to understand the rules, you have to know the rules, because you have to know how to break the rules properly. Because photography is an art form, so if we all just follow the rules, we're all going to take exactly the same pictures. And I think that's something that's very important to understand when it adds to your picture. There's no right or wrongs. It's all subjective. I mean, we all know stories of silly art pieces look at that Banksy stunt this last week. Anyone know about the Banksy stunt? Where it was sold for over £1 million, and then as the hammer went down, it started shredding £1 million of painting. Yeah, it's stunts, but it's all subjective. Some people think that's fantastic, and they think it's performance art, and it adds to the value of that art piece. Others think it's ridiculous. Subjectivity is, I think, king. Yes, ma'am. These lines down here. Yeah, I'm shooting through glass. Yeah, it's one of my. I love foreground in a picture. I'm always trying to add foreground or little specular things. I don't like clean photographs.
Also, that model that you showed with that yellow.
Yes.
She had that same reflection towards the eye, between the eyes, and the color. So, is it done in processing, or actually when you add that mist or when you add that foreground, it comes naturally?
I would have to look at exactly what you're talking about. Let me go back there for you quickly. This one, yes. Which?
Same foreground.
Yeah. Oh, that's just a highlight on her. I guess the makeup brief. You can see it down the chin. It's more glowing, shiny makeup that they're looking for. And I suppose it's just pure coincidence that it looks the same. This is supposed to be hot and sweaty, and that's why it's glowing a little bit more in the makeup. Okay. There will be a little bit of Photoshop here, but this is all shot in studio. So again, it's some of my projection techniques where background. I'm not going to fly to Arizona to do something that I feel about Donald Trump. It's not worth that, so I'll just do it in my studio over there, and Arizona comes into the background. Other than that, the photography is a little bit of retouching on his face, obviously. Okay. All right, so again, how do I make you feel? I think this goes a little bit more towards directing. This young lady in this image here, you can see it's kind of a weak image. It's not really, well, for me, it's not doing anything. Over here, there's tons of ambiguity in this picture, which I really, really like about the picture. She was too aware of the camera. The poor child was only 16 years old, but she got cast to be a 30-something woman. So she doesn't really have the life experience to deliver that to the camera, and I could sense that I was really struggling. And you get a feeling for that when you're shooting any form of model, especially with fashion. You cannot lose the connection. You cannot lose the confidence. Once that person feels that you're not in control, they're going to start doubting themselves, and they're not giving everything to the camera. So your job it's absolutely key to have their confidence up there in whatever way it is that you. I've got a few tricks if you want to know about them. Yeah, you want to know about them? So, you want to have a break? Is it break time? Okay, let me finish off on this one then, and then we'll take a break and we'll come back on the tricks. So something like this is one of the tricks, but not all of the tricks. I select my makeup artists very, 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 very carefully. And I know my makeup artists very well, because what happens is they're the first point of contact with someone. So if the mood is maybe a bit more rock and roll that day, I'll inform my makeup artist how to dress. If the mood is very conservative in the shoot that day, I will inform my makeup artist how to dress on that day. So what happens with that is she spends maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours with the client. Obviously, I'm also talking to the client, but the makeup artist is the first line. She needs to become friends. She needs to break the ice. She needs to do all of those things. So in this picture, I just wasn't able to get this young lady to not be self-aware and conscious of the camera. So I get my makeup artist in. If my camera's failing or something like that, I just make a little hint over there, and then the makeup artist comes to me and says, just wait, I just want to go and touch this up. Oh, okay, yeah, go and touch up. And then I run and I go and fix what I need to fix while the makeup artist is there touching up. So something like this, also the same. I'll look at the makeup artist, and somehow I'll communicate to the makeup artist and say, things just aren't happening here, buy me time. And the makeup artist will come in, and then it'll be a lot more comfortable because now she's not aware of me, because she's talking to the makeup artist now, and the makeup artist is saying, just look at me like this, and let me see, and I'll just be watching from the sides, and then snapping one or two. We'll get back to more of those tricks. I think we're having just a quick break, and then we'll get back to more of those tricks. Yes, sir. Hi. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, great. Thank you.
That's quite interesting, actually. Some of the tricks, or let's say, I use in my photo shoot.
Yes.
And having the foreground as vast, I use flexis and
Yes.
acrylic.
Yes. Yes.
In one of the shoots I had was a controlled environment within a studio
Yeah.
during summertime, but the overall was a winter look. So, the glass,
Yeah.
and then a spray of water, and
Yes.
the model was dressed, with the high neck and, with the heavy clothes. A little bit of playing around with lighting.
Wonderful. No, I love foregrounds. Oh, let me switch this off before everyone's listening to it. right. So I think we stopped off there on tips and tricks. So I'm going to start early while there's still a few empty seats so that fewer people hear the next tip that I'm giving, because I actually, I said to myself I would never give away this one piece of advice. And I love giving away advice, but yeah, anyway. One of my favorite things to do is exactly this. If I'm trying to look for someone's confidence, first thing I do on any shoot, I have to build the person's confidence. I have to gain their trust. With any director, especially the director of a film, you're living with these people for months and you need to get them to deliver you. The director of a sports team, Jose Mourinho, is in so much trouble at the moment because he's losing the players and things. You've got to have people's trust. If you lose the trust in the studio, you've pretty much lost your shoot. So, favorite trick. I start off with the camera set on black and white, and I overexpose, because automatically it's retouched like that. There's very little retouching on this. So it's the old Hollywood trick. And it came to me when I said earlier on, there's this one client that I've worked with for about 25 years, and he always tells me to shoot from there. And he'll always joke with me and say, Clinton, you're a terrible photographer, but you're a great retoucher. I'm so much more beautiful than what I am in your pictures. What's wrong with you? And he's obviously got a lot of humor in him. And it made me think, but the days of Hollywood photographs from the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, they didn't have Photoshop. They didn't have any of that. It was just exposure techniques in the darkroom. So I thought to myself, well, you know, that porcelain skin over there, that's just overexposure. So I just created a picture style on my camera where it's completely overexposed but still nice lines, and then miraculously I'll just shoot 2 or 3 shots and look how beautiful you are. Oh, he makes miracles, and right there you got them, and then you don't lose them. That's your job as a director in a shoot, is not to lose that person. And that's why I have those other little tricks with the makeup artist. If I'm in trouble, anytime you're in trouble, you've always got to be able to call someone. You always need a friend when you're in trouble. So you need friends in the studio too. Quite easy to do that. It's like, please just go in and just say that you just want to touch something up. I just need 5 minutes. Very easy to do that to keep the studio running smoothly. Okay. Okay. Anyway, that's sort of where it ended up. As I said, she's a 16-year-old girl that they liked the look of her. So they asked us to use her, but she's supposed to represent a woman that's maybe in her later 20s, early 30s or something like that, a little bit more sophisticated than a young 16-year-old. And then the earrings, they hadn't finished designing the earrings yet, so we hid all of that away. And then obviously the jewels come in afterwards in the post-production and the prints on the side with the names and everything like that. But at the end of the day, success for the client. Okay, so how do I make you feel? This was quite a recent one. This again was shot on the mirrorless camera. And so this for me as an experiment, this was one of the first times then that I came in, and now I'm not tethered, I'm not doing anything like that. I'm trying to sort of work in like a mid-range kind of environment with this. The client wanted luxury, but still young and fun. And I think this client went and launched now in Milan. I think at One Milan is one of the fashion weeks over there. The client was over there about 2 weeks ago with this whole range. I think in closing, I'm trying to show you a broad range of different types of pictures that I'll shoot. I'm not trying to keep it to just my work that I'm precious about. You know, this is completely different to the previous shot, which is completely different to the other shot, because all of your clients are always different. And you do need to adapt. Although you've got your own style, and you'll have certain very faithful clients, you need to adapt to the environment. And I think the closing message about how do I make you feel and conveying emotions is try not to turn the models into clothes hangers, because then it just looks like an e-commerce site. And if that's what you're doing as your fashion business e-commerce, then that's fine. In an e-commerce environment, you're putting out 1,000 images a day. And that's just your job, to be there. The light setup is standard. Everything is standard. They just come in with the next outfit, next outfit, next outfit, next outfit, because it's all just going up onto e-commerce. But yeah, if you are more serious about it, the mood is critical. Let's get to directing. So, something like this. This over here is the Association of Accounting Professionals. So when the ad agency came to me and said, we want you to shoot profiles for the Association of Accounting Professionals, I was like, oh no, another corporate portrait job. And I think I was just in a good mood that morning, and I said to the client, sure, I'll do it. But they're all going to be fashion models. We're shooting everything in black and white, and it's going to be high fashion. And the client, knowing me and knowing my work, was a little bit hesitant, but they said yes, and there you go. It's young, it's hip, it's cool. Their results, after they did this, this was probably about 2 years ago that we started doing this with them, but the young people coming into the company has increased. Fashion is applicable across the board. It's a mood. It's not just that social media thing of high color and over-retouched. It's absolutely a mood that reflects society. So here you've got a whole range of people. I think it's fantastic. Again, there's mountains in the background, there's cities in the background, there's beaches in the background, in-studio projection. You can't get a board of directors to all come to one place and take up their time for 2 or 3 days. Never going to happen. Impossible. Creating it with projection. Okay, so your shoot process, communication in your shoot process is so super critical. If you do your pre-production properly, then you will have your list. I think if you walk into any environment and the person that you're with is unpredictable, you're uncertain, you're not sure of what's going to happen, the trust isn't there. So the pre-production aspects, most of the time when I'm in a shoot environment, I'll either have my notebook or an iPad or something like that, and I've gone through it, and I'll have maybe 5 or 6 bankers, which are my absolute certain images that I know I'm going to get with this client. And obviously representative of maybe there's a set of wardrobe that we have to go through, or a certain amount of pages that we have to fill in a magazine. So you'll have your set of bankers, 5 or 6 shots, and then for the rest of it, we feed off of the energy of the shoot. So we'll create characters, and we'll see what happens in between. I think the elephant shot was unplanned on the shoot. That was one of the unplanned shots. But they came in from feeding. I'm not sure exactly what the situation, this was probably about 12 or 13 years ago by now, but they were walking them through the space, and we were set up, and I asked them if they could please just make a detour, and I asked the lady if she felt comfortable with it, and she was nervous, very nervous, but yeah. So that was feeding off of the energy of the shoot, things happening around you on set and in the environment, and something like that was very planned, a planned part of the shoot. let them know beforehand what your shoot process is. So anyone that comes into my studio, I'll tell them there's only two things I'm interested in, and that's your eyes and your hands. That's all I'm interested in. So for your eyes, I want you to be a character. At the risk of offending any blonde people in the audience, there's those old blonde jokes of a blonde to look intelligent is always doing left foot, right foot, right foot, so that it looks like something is going on. And photography is exactly the same. You need to give someone a story. You need to tell someone that they're James Bond and they're doing this, just to get a bit of a story into the head that there's something going on in the eyes. Because if there's nothing, what is the saying? The eyes are the window to the soul. And if there's nothing going on in the eyes, I see it. I see so quickly that my clients are tired, or they're not with me, or they're distracted, or anything like that. So I'll create a character, and I'll tell them you're in an apartment, and you're driving a 1959 Corvette. And hey, how good is that, right? Immediately. So we'll create characters. If I'm looking for something from the 70s, I'll put some 70s music on, and that's a completely different mood in the studio. So it's all about creating the mood and creating the characters. That's the big part of your directing. So eyes and hands. I'll never ask someone to smile, but I'll ask them to close your eyes and think about your child. Think about you can't help yourself if there's something that makes you happy, and I ask you to close your eyes and think about that. It takes over your face, and it's natural. So character, in that sense, very important. And then I'll always tell them, I don't expect 20 shots. The movies have given fashion photography a bad reputation. You hear, krrrr. That's not the reality. It doesn't work like that. It's about close your eyes, think about it, get into character. It's the same as film. I'll give you a few minutes to get into character. When you're ready, the camera's always waiting for you. That's my job. I'm here with the camera, I'm waiting for you. And when they're ready, they come up and they're into the camera, and those first one or two shots, the soul is there. Things are there in the face that after 2 shots, you start realizing, you start getting stiff, and you start realizing I'm here for the camera again. So I'll always say that. As soon as you start feeling uncomfortable, you close your eyes, you turn away, you do anything else, but don't look at the camera. Because as long as you're looking at the camera, and I'll do it very often, I'll stop and breathe, stop, go, put down, stop. It's not there. Nothing's there. Character, getting into character. Hands, that was the eyes and creating the eyes. The hands are the second one. So you can be smiling, but your hands like that. That is not comfortable. That is not happy. Hands are the second biggest giveaway of body language that there is. So when someone's fidgeting the whole time or something, or doing something with the hands, that's saying what mood they're in. So I'll always be watching that in the shoot. The eyes and the hands. I'll always be looking for soft, elegant hands. Usually from the smallest finger down, it's just curled in. It's soft and it's elegant. If there's a model with a hand like that, what is that saying? If you're just looking at that. But the rest of the picture's beautiful and elegant. The picture dies right there. So eyes and hands, most important for me. And then what I'm looking at is the height of your chin. Very important. If it's a portrait of the Queen of England, she's standing there like that, looking down on everyone. If it's a sports star or something like that, they're there and they're getting serious. The eye line is more below the horizon. Everything's happening below the horizon, and you're looking up through your eyes. So the height of the chin, it's quite amazing. Once you're aware of that, and I shoot 2 exact same shots of you now, with your chin slightly up and your chin slightly down. Completely different picture. even though you don't move anything else, just that, doop, doop, completely different. So very important. I'll tell them I'm going to ask you chin up a little bit, chin down a little bit. I'm going to direct your face slightly to the left and slightly to the right. And then just the axis of your head. I like to photograph proud people. So I'm always looking, if I'm standing here the whole time like this, I'm quite submissive and I'm asking you a question. I've got a straight, proud head. I'm saying something different again. So the shape of your head on your body, incredibly important. And that's it. That is my explanation before a shoot. Eyes, hands, and where this is. The last thing that I say is don't you ever model in my studio. There's no modeling. Never model. The reason for that, if I set up a light over here, it's falling on my face in a very specific way. As soon as you model, you've changed my whole studio. If the light is here, coming from straight down onto you, and you move by 3 degrees, you've moved my light for me. I'm the photographer. You don't move my lights around. So there's no modeling in my studio. There is a collaborative process in the beginning. I'm not mean to everyone, but it's a collaborative process in the beginning while you're busy getting to know that person in the studio. You're finding out certain things about them. You're looking at the face. You're seeing what's working. You're fine-tuning the light. So it's a collaborative process, but once it gets down to game time, that's it. No more modeling because that light is set specifically for your face at that angle. Yes, sir?
For the timing, is it important? Like after certain time, the model or you understand, be exhausted. So
Oh yeah, for sure. I've had a model on a fashion shoot. Halfway through the shoot, she didn't get off the ground. She started crying. And it was just a very comfortable lifestyle fashion shoot, but it's emotionally draining to give to the camera the whole time. And you need to be aware of that, and you need to read that. And I worked with her many times after that, but maybe she was just having a bad day or something like that. It was nothing that I did. We good friends, but it's just too much. And I think it's important to read that and to know when halas. That's it. Because also you're wasting everyone's time then. You can see. So I think that's part of your professionalism and part of the reason why you have your 5 shots over there and you go for those bankers. And you get those bankers as fast as possible because that's your job. That's the professional side of fashion. Get those bankers, nail them, get them out of the way, then you can have fun. Right. Something like this, for instance. So here's one of the great reasons why there's no modeling in my studio. That line under the jaw right there. I've set the light specifically for that line. If you move out of it, there's too much shadow. If you move down from it, it's too much light. It's all over the place. So I want that line over there accentuated, and that's where I put the light. This over here, that and that. The picture's almost exactly the same. So as much as what I say to you, just the slightest change of a chin, or everything can be the same, the slightest change of a hand. Here's an example of the hand. So that over there is going more towards diva. When your hand's like this, what are you saying? Get away. I've had enough. Get away from me. By turning the hand inward, there's a different confidence that comes into her. She's more self-assured and she's more elegant than dramatic. So the one becomes elegant and the other one becomes dramatic. I'm not saying that this one over here for me is my favorite. I'm not saying either is correct or incorrect, but it's just an example of exactly the same picture with the slightest change. And that's your responsibility as the director of a fashion shoot, is to try and be aware of these types of things, how small details make huge differences in the end of your story. So going back to what I was saying earlier on about the emotional thesaurus, usually on a shoot I will have 3 words. any 3 words that I've identified as guidelines for me. I don't think I'm the smartest guy in the world, so maybe that's why 3 words is enough for me. So I'll say maybe happy, free, young. And that's it. Going through the whole shoot, write it on your hand, do anything. And it's just a little reminder of what am I doing here. So this was, it's high fashion. There was no drama in it. She's very sophisticated. She's very elegant. She's very confident, the woman who wears these clothes. So that's why when I saw that, I thought, no, but she's not giving up. She's not pushing things away. She's that woman. She's not that woman. So, yeah, just 2 or 3 words. Easy enough to remember that. Make sure you're following your original thought process. Yes, ma'am.
For you are saying like more belly hands and something works more. Any advice for men, like when you do a fashion for men?
It really depends on the publication that you're working for the men. A lot of the publications, in general, I think it's pretty much the same all around the world. The publications will prefer a slightly more mature man. I think in the UK, some of that European market, they tend to favor also a younger man. But especially in South Africa, it's a little bit older, a little bit more masculine, a little bit more rugged. So I think you take the guidelines from the men, and again, it's the type of characters that you're playing. I don't have a very specific rule, I think, or answer to give you on that one, except for someone once asked me back in South Africa, how do you like for a black person? Exactly the same way as what you like for a white person. There's no difference. It's people. And I think for men and women, it's very similar. A lot of my photography, people will say that there's a rule that you have to be soft on a woman's face. It depends on the mood or the story that you're conveying. If someone is quite aggressive and confident, then you can like more aggressive and confident. You don't always have to just treat it very softly. So again, it's about the emotions that need to be conveyed within that set of images. Right. We're going to get into now just a quick example of fashion with one light. So those are the basics of Fashion 101 out of the way. Now we're just going to go through 2 or 3 quick pieces of lighting and styles. Any questions still remaining from there? Yeah.
Are you preparing the position in your mind before the shooting?
Yeah.
Because or a certain number or something like that?
Always. And that's why I don't like to work with pictures. Because if a client gives me a brief with a set of pictures, it puts an expectation in their minds and it puts pressure on your mind. And inevitably, a lot of the time, the client will come to you with a picture that was produced for £1.5 million and give you a budget of 10,000 dirham. So yeah, it simply doesn't work. So yes.
Like because you are preparing
Yes.
this model,
So,
I will let her standing like that or something. You are designing this position before you are going.
yes. So with something like this, I'll have a look at all of the wardrobe. This image over here, earlier on there was an image where I said she had to be posed in a certain way because of that piece of dress. Same shoot, and the light was on her back. Now it's from the same shoot. What's happening over here, because this is high fashion, this is haute couture. So I look at the garment, what strikes me about the garment, and how do I convey the garment to the public? So the first thing for me was the satin detailing. on the garment. Every piece is individual and unique when it comes to high fashion, and you have to accentuate it. So there's many shots from this series, which unfortunately I couldn't include in this presentation, but there's these thick coats, and she's this aggressive bullfighter, because I had to find a way to convey the weight of the material. This coat, you'll get legs that size if you wear it for the whole winter. It was heavy. So for everything, like that previous one, it's got an open back on it. So I left the light at exactly the same side. So on this light for the ribbon, I knew I wanted to show that. I wasn't getting enough of it, so we eventually ended up in this mood over here. Obviously, the length of it trailing on the floor behind her, loved this curve, and this shape conveyed the elegance of the outfit also for me. And yes, every single one planned specifically for number one, well, depending on the client, what takes priority, the model or the wardrobe. And when it's high fashion most of the time, it's the wardrobe and the mood, yeah. Very planned. Okay, so fashion with one light. We're just going to jump into a short little video.
Okay, hey everybody, we are here today to have a look at lighting. So shooting with one light is really so simple that I don't think it's necessary to show you a full behind the scenes tutorial video. Instead, what I'm rather going to do is I'm going to show you some end results, and we'll talk our way through that, and I'll maybe sketch one or two lighting diagrams, but it's simple. It's generally a model or two models and one light that's going to be moving around slightly. Nothing more to it. Okay, so before
I specifically chose two people here
use this
with
nice
one light.
clean slate on the left-hand side over here to draw a quick illustration of the shoot. So here we had Liz and Dion. Over here we had our light source, and here is the little birdie with the camera. Now, generally throughout the images that you're going to see in this tutorial, the light might have moved a little bit to the left or a little bit to the right. Other than that, the only changes were that I might have pushed the light slightly higher or lower to accommodate, for instance, when the girls are sitting over here, I would have dropped the light down to a much lower level than when Liz is standing at 193 with heels on. She's over 2 meters. So my light is probably, the bottom of my light is sitting at about 2 meters, and the main area of my light source is probably sitting at about 2 meters 30.
Okay, so unless I'm shooting commercially, I really favor a one light setup. And I think the reason for that is I love black and white photography, and it builds contrast. I favor the smaller shapers, 60 by 90s, with a grid on it, so that it directs the light, so everything, so I can be very sculptural with it. When you're working with big shapers, there's a lot of wrap in it. It's a much more commercial image than a very fine directed light. So that's pretty much my favorite over there, is a 60 by 90 and keeping it quite simple. What I find where a lot of people make a mistake, it's so difficult to interact with someone in a studio space. Most of the time, they're not your friends. They're people you might not even have met them before. But your job as a photographer and a director of that photo shoot is to really get along with that person for that hour or 2 or 3 that you're shooting. You have to really, really get along with them. And one of the things that I see that photographers make a big mistake is they complicate the process and they get technical. And then we're taking, oh, no, just hold on. And then I'm moving this around and I'm changing this over here and I'm doing that. And you're sitting there the whole time thinking, okay, you know, what's happening? And you're losing the person in that process. So for me, one light setup, come in, put up the one light, you can kind of figure out what's going on. It's quick, it's easy, and you're not losing that person. If you're working with professional models, yeah, sure, 3, 4 lights, they understand the process, everything is very detailed, but to keep that connection, and I think that's a lot of old film photographers, when they were staring down at it, that was the beauty of the process. There was never this barrier that came up the whole time. And today, one of the biggest faults of photographers, chimping, staring at the back of the camera, while the person that's sitting in front of the camera is sitting there feeling awkward, and you going like this the whole time. You withdrawing yourself into your own space over there. You're creating a barrier between yourself and the person that's sitting. And this is applicable to portraiture also, not just to fashion. Don't build those barriers. Spend as little time as possible on the technical aspects while you're busy with them, and also on the looking and the reviews. As little time as possible. Don't break that connection. Keeping it simple with one light, great way to learn. You can change it up so much. You can pretty much do anything with one light. Here I'm completely overexposing the whole process. It's a very angular hairstyle. I want to accentuate that, so I'm not interested in skin at all. Burn it all out and just keep the dark hair in there. Quite easy and simple. I mean, it's a completely different world, but it's still just one light. And it's just exposures. I think, and that's another whole topic that I actually feel quite strongly about, that I would actually love to give a talk on, is exposure. And how little people realize. I look at images sometimes and I think, oh, you're just one stop out there. And it's not because the picture is incorrectly exposed. The picture might be correctly exposed, but the mood isn't there. And by going slightly lighter or slightly darker, you alter the mood completely. I do a lot of real estate photography also. And in all of the real estate photography, my histogram is right bottom corner, lighter. Everything's a lot lighter because you don't want to live in a dark, heavy space to sell property. You need to be living in a light, airy space that attracts people to it. So that'll always be a rule for any form of real estate, and you'll notice when I mention that. It'll be maybe a stopover, something like that, because it creates a certain mood. Yes, sir. Yeah. This is flash. This was many years ago. I would guess that was on a beauty dish. Looking. Oh, sorry, wrong buttons. Looking at that type, the penumbra over there, I would guess that's a beauty dish that I'm using. Where it's, I really enjoy a beauty dish. It's got a great mixture of hard yet soft, and if you angle it just slightly, where you're just feathering the light, you're getting a different quality out of it. So it's a wonderful light to play with and get different moods out of. Oh. Okay, so uncomplicated studio. I've expressed that part to you already. This lady was really, I couldn't understand it. I think she's about 65 years old. She looks wonderful. She must have lived a really, really good life because she looks incredible for her age. There's not a lot of retouching, but I don't know her. I know a little bit about what she did in her life, but she has no confidence. For some reason, she's absolutely beautiful, but she hasn't got a good self-esteem. And she said to me before, while you're shooting, you'll notice the flaws. And I thought, well, maybe she's got something about. I never saw it. I never saw it in the shoot. But I think this was probably one of my favorites out of that shoot, she's this person who's maybe living a half a life or showing you half of herself. She just didn't have that confidence. But what I'm showing you here, the reason for this, it's still a one light setup. It's still quite a contrasty light. You wouldn't usually, or the rule book says go big, go broad, wrap, go soft, do all of those things. This lady is 65 years old, and this is still the same small shaper that I'll be using on a young model. Yes, you do things slightly differently. Yes, you've got to read every situation, but you don't need to listen to those types of rules. They aren't always relevant. Okay, so coming back to this one that you've just seen over here, that is such an easy way to get into fashion, and it's something that people, I have tungsten lights and I have strobe lights, I have a whole lot of different lights that I'll use and shoot with. I think that's why I settled with Pro Photo, because their shapers are incredible. They got wonderful shapers. You can do so much with their shapers. But in an instance like this, I'm using a tungsten light, and I see exactly where the shadow is falling. So that's something that photographers forget. There's a reason why you have a modeling light on a strobe head. Use it. You need to see, and I actually went through that for a few years. I got so confident, I thought I was really doing my thing, and modeling lights were off, and forget it, because I know what I'm doing. I don't need a modeling light. And I did that for maybe 1 or 2 years, and then I realized, you fool. You're forgetting about all of these beautiful basics, and it's so simple. If you've got a good modeling light on your flash, you can set it up and you can see exactly how it's shaping the face. So please don't forget about your modeling lights. If you're shooting studio strobes, modeling lights are very, very important. It's not just for sort of tungsten shapers. Strobes, tungstens, everything, use the modeling light. It really does help your work. It just gives that extra edge, that extra refinement to the shots. Okay, so moving out of the studio and one light setups, we're going into fashion with available light.
Liz and Dion. Available light, natural light, call it what you will. It's probably the best light that you want.
You're seeing the same models, because when I was building a whole lot of videos for educational purposes, it was in a short space of time, so a lot of it's the same model.
My first light of choice is that it's real, it's genuine, it doesn't detract or disturb. As soon as you see a lot of, whether it's flashlight, tungstens, LEDs, whatever it is, but as soon as you put artificial light sources into an image, there's a point where the image doesn't feel genuine anymore, where you can feel that the image has been created for the viewer to look at. Walk around and feel the light and get to know the light inside the situation. First thing that you've always got to determine, it's exactly the same as using artificial light. You have to determine where my main light source is. If you're in studio with a big softbox or flash or brolly or whatever it is, you're always paying attention to what is your key light, your backlight, your sight lights, whatever it may be. And that's what you're looking for in a naturally lit space, is when I am shaping whoever's sitting for me, where's my key light? It might be a big window. Most of the time, obviously, it is. We need...
Okay, so available light, all of the principles stay the same. It's a light source. As much as the studio, it's a light source that's either focused and hard, or it's a light source that's diffused, that's soft. The principles all remain the same. Always look for the key light. Even after sunset, once that light has gone down, that's still your key light over there. That's still your main light. That's still where you point the nose. If you want the cleanest possible outcome, you're pointing towards the key light the whole time. So when you're in an environment, you with available light, even if you're in the shadows, what you'll notice in the shadows, the head will still be overexposed over here. Always happens. That's why you scrim a lot on top also, protect over there, because if you're just in a straightforward shadow situation and you take a normal shot, the top of the head will be 2 stops more than the face. So always be aware of that when you're shooting with available light. The easiest thing, I've got an app called Sunseeker. Is it Sunseeker? I think it's Sunseeker. So very basic app, and all it does is it tracks the sun in the sky. So any location that I get out to, if I'm scouting a location or anything like that, I can put it into 3D mode, and basically it activates the camera on your phone, and you can have an exact look, and I know that the sun will be rising over there, and at that time of the day it's going to be exactly over there, and I can look at my location, and I can predetermine everything like you were saying about how much is it predetermined. Sunseeker, and you follow the whole trail down to there. Plan your entire day around that. You get free versions of it, and you get paid versions of it, and you get versions that only work on iPhones. But it's a great option, even for leisure purposes. Wonderful to have, but incredibly important when you're working with available light. If it is, some people associate available light with cheap work or non-paying clients. Not true. Not true at all. Just because you only rock up with a camera bag does not mean that you're being unprofessional. I'm not going to get these type of emotions and results if I'm smacking everyone with flash all day long. And that's something that clients need to understand, and that you need to make them understand. But I love available light because you travel so light, you take your camera and off you go. And it's wonderful. So something like this. This image here would not have worked if I did not look at the time of the day and notice where the windows are and at what time. Her gazing out there without these shapes through the windows, what is she looking at? What is she doing? Is it someone else in the room? Is she looking outside? So all of your story gets infused by paying attention to little details like that. I know that at that time of the day I'm timing that part of the location for that, because that's what the light's going to look like. So even though it's available light, you are still controlling it. Keep control of the available light. Something like this. So this is golden hour. This is right at the end of the day. This is, you know, the typical light that everyone talks about using, your perfect light. Golden hour. This is I think just around sunset. The sun has just dipped. But if you're still shooting at 1,600, 2,000 ISO, somewhere around there, it's super bright. You're still overexposing. I think that's the one thing about available light. Some people are still scared of pushing the ISO on their cameras. For me, personally, I love it. I love a little bit of film. People call it noise. People call it grain. That's why I love the 5DS. It's just got this gritty, organic grain feel to it that's not perfect, but I don't want perfect. I shoot people. Humans are not perfect. So I don't want a sensor that shows a perfect result. That's why something like a 5D Mark IV or something like that, people go on about how technically brilliant a Sony is, or a 5 Mark IV, and these are just perfect cameras. Not for me. I don't want that personally. I was told when the first time when some of the Canon product managers put a 5DS into my hands, they said to me, it's 50 million pixels, so you don't shoot it out of hand. You need to put it onto a tripod. You need to steady it because you're going to see movement. If you zoom in over there, you're going to see the imperfections. I took it, you see a lot of the time I shoot one-handed. It's because I'm always talking. I'm always communicating, so this hand's always showing this or doing that, and the other one's just out of hand. And when I saw the results that were just a little bit muddy or dirty or gritty or grainy or blurry or something, not a blurred image, but it was just on the negative side of perfect, loved it. Absolutely loved it. It gave life for me. It felt human for me, that little part of the human spirit. Okay. The other thing I think about available light and natural light, it gives permanence for me from a subjective perspective. It just feels for me like it really happened. Like there's some truth in what I'm doing. When you take a big flash and you go, kapow, it's been done to entertain me. It's been done to sell me something. There's a purpose behind an artificially created image. And I think that's what I genuinely love. And all of the old greats, whether it's Cartier-Bresson or whoever it is, and there's so much natural light, and those pictures live forever. And they have meaning, and they have permanence, and they have gravitas. And I think that for me is the beauty of available light, is it gives me a little bit of that. And even when I do fill it, I don't like to feel the flash. It's got to be just enough to open up the shadows. Just enough so that I don't feel it, so that it still feels like available light. All right, so here's moving on to something completely different again. In the beginning, I showed you that little content creator, social media thing that I was shooting, just running around like that. These are the results from it. Nothing's retouched over here. I only shot this yesterday. So I haven't had the opportunity to do retouching or anything like that. And also it's shot on EOS R. So Capture One and all of those, they're not supporting EOS R yet because it's got a new file format to it. So I'm just working on a beta version of software that can just unlock the files. So it's not full potential or anything like that. But what I do like about this is that I also get a sense of the time of day from this. And although you don't think that you're going to see all of these details, your subconscious takes it in. And a lot of selling to people, at the end of the day, photography, most of the job of photography is to sell things to people. To sell an idea, to sell a thought, to sell a fantasy. And fantasy is a very misunderstood word in photography. When you drive an old Toyota and you open up a magazine and you see the Porsche, it's selling you fantasy of an improved version of yourself. When you're sitting behind your desk and you haven't stopped working for 3 weeks and you open up the magazine and you see a picture of a tropical island, it's selling you the fantasy of where you would rather be. When you open up a makeup advert and there's a new lipstick, it's selling you the fantasy of what your face should. You're not sitting there and saying, oh, you're selling me a fantasy. It's subconscious. It's filtering through you. So I think for me, I feel early morning here. Yes, sir. I'm glad you noticed that, because that's something that when I show this to the client hasn't even seen this. You're seeing this before the client's seeing this. Like I said, I shot this yesterday. That is the one thing that I found is the downfall of being a social media creator. Because for me, this image, you're 100% correct. She would have been more in the center. Yes, 100% correct, granted. It was an experiment for me. As I said, the first time, 24, 105, and running around, no one around me, getting shots quick, 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 one after the other, 2 models, and I think the whole shoot lasted maybe 2 hours. Beach, gardens, lobby, the main Peacock Alley area, the upstairs granite floors, the 6th floor atrium, then up to the Imperial Suite. So it was like that the whole day, but that's what I wanted to do. That's why I wanted to know what this camera feels like. How does it perform? What's it doing? I'm going to cut that wall. I'm going to cut it. I have to. I know. Yeah, thank you. I know. But other than that, I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the shoot. I do like that I get a sense of fresh early morning. That was the spirit that I wanted to come out in the wardrobe, the blues, the colors, everything's working. Most of it successful for me. So something like this, I think typically when people speak about using available light, and especially with portraiture for women, it's a very soft, diffused window light. Like those beauty shots that I showed you earlier on, you know, the typical rule is it must be clean, it must be soft, it must be beautiful. This is still clean, and this is from the same shoot again. The color looks terrible. The dress was a very bad color for me, and I'm still halfway in the process of trying to figure out what color I want to make the dress, and I can't unlock the files properly because there still isn't proper software for the files, so I know the color is off in this, but what I want to show you here is the direct light and using available light in a way maybe that the rule books don't say you should be doing it. You shouldn't be putting someone in extreme. That's burnt out over there. These, I mean, I'll pull that detail back in very slightly on the final files, but it's not really according to the rules. You shouldn't be doing this. Not with a woman. Not in a. But it's beautiful. I think it does for me subjectively. I do think it works, and I do think it creates an atmosphere and a mood. So don't be scared to use all aspects of available light. It's not just for the softness of it and in the shadows and golden hour. It's absolutely all aspects of it. I think this is sort of just in closing what is really nice for me about available light also. And after having seen that video and the way I'm working, what I've always enjoyed about available light is that it's a very mobile way of working. There's no, okay, just give me 10 minutes, I just need to break set. We're going to move set over to that side over there. We're going to set up again, so take a break for a while. There's none of that that's happening in the available light process. Over here, I don't know if you're familiar with the Waldorf and Russelheimer. So from the lobby at the front of Peacock Alley, it's like, well, let's just run, let's go. And off you go. And through Peacock Alley and then up the stairs, and you're moving and you're running. Shame, they all had blisters afterwards. They weren't too happy with me by the end of the shoot, but anyway, that's the beautiful part of available light. It's a spontaneous way to work. Yes, sir? That is one more thing. I think some of my friends who watch me work, they sort of say that it's like watching someone conduct an orchestra. That's not, but it's just because it's something that I've become very used to doing. They always ask me, why don't you work in another way? But I think it's almost just the planning. If the planning is there before the time, and you know where you're going and what you're doing, you'll miss some. I fail on quite a few of them where the light's not correct or something like that. But you're making sort of an educated guess with a lot of it. So you may be metering for an average on the place sometimes. And when you look at the books of fantastic photographers, and you think, man, they are so good. Please just say to yourself the next time that for that one image, there are probably 1,000 images where that nose was just joining the wall. So every time you see one great image, know that there were so many failures that made that. So yeah, absolutely, the light, I get that. You try your best to keep it quite constant. Right. Just sort of a closing example on available light, and an example of please don't always follow the rules. One of the first things that I've got when I put this slide up is, but you didn't expose his eyes properly. Yes, I know I didn't. It's very deliberate. So the character, there's smoke coming out of his mouth, more mystery and intrigue to the character. That is, yeah, straight midday sun when everyone tells you you should not be shooting outside. Just don't do it in the UAE. The makeup melts. It's too hot. But don't be afraid of the midday sun. Don't be afraid of the direct window light. Don't be afraid of the soft light. It's all, a lot of the time, people say, oh, it's not nice light. I've got a photographer friend who's incredibly successful in Singapore. And he always tells me, we got the worst light in the world over here. And we always have this thing about, come on, bro. You know, really? The worst light? You got the worst mind. And we'll go, there's no such thing as bad light. There's only bad ideas. The light will always work if the idea that you have fits that light. So don't worry about what time of day it is. It will work with the correct ideas and the correct moods. Sometimes the light's aggressive, sometimes the light is soft. Just remember to internalize those emotions and know how you're dealing in emotions, not just simply trying to copy images. Yes, sir?
How much time do you spend giving the morning?
That will vary. I'll always read the situation. So what I do know about any shoot is that hair and makeup is probably going to be busy for anywhere from an hour and a half to 2.5 hours, depending on what's going on. So when I first welcome someone into my space, if I don't know them, I'll try and judge their character. I'll try and see what type of mood they're in. I'll just try and read the situation with that person. And from there, I'll decide. Sometimes you only need 15 minutes with that person. Sometimes it might be a case of you can see this is going to be difficult and you need to earn trust. So I'll go and sit with the makeup artist and with them, and I'll drink coffee and I'll talk for an hour. A magazine did an interview on me at some point, and they said, if you ask him to cut down a tree, he'll probably have a conversation with the tree for about a half an hour first on where it's going to fall and everything like that, and then he'll take a minute to just chop it down. And I think that is it's an important point over there, is you've got to establish all of that connection and give it as much time as it needs. Right, so here we're moving on to the last subject for tonight, which is fashion portraiture. And I kind of like fashion portraiture because it does spill over for some people that might be intimidated by fashion and wardrobe and things like that. Fashion portraiture gives less attention to the wardrobe and more attention to the person, which I think is a fantastic space to be in.
A genre that sits in between a few other genres, and that is fashion portraiture. You might not be familiar with the term, but you sure as hell have heard about portraiture and about fashion. The combination of these two genres, portraiture and fashion, I think for me is a beautiful place to work. It's a very emotional space. With fashion, you focused a lot on the garment and what the wardrobe is doing. And it's all about telling the story of the wardrobe, and the person comes second. Whereas fashion portraiture, you are taking portraiture, the likeness of the person, so it focuses on...
Okay, sorry, I had to cut that video short for the presentation. But fashion portraiture, did you notice the back of the camera there? Earlier on you were asking me about the light on the one outfit. Did you see the highlight was already there, right on the back of the camera? You could see it was in there, so no Photoshop in that. Okay. Fashion portraiture, I think, has been popularized. Well, it's always been there, but it's more the domain of celebrity. So what happens in fashion is that when you're just selling wardrobe and there's a model, before the era of supermodels, no one knew the model's name, no one's interested in who the model is or anything like that. It's just a person that's there to wear clothes. But then with the advent of celebrity, they're the people who sell the clothes. So a lot of those type of fashion editorials, they're very focused on the person as well as the clothing. And it's telling the story about the person as well as the clothing. And that's where those genres and lines have blurred quite a bit and created something. I don't think a lot of people use the terms, but I do like to call it fashion portraiture when I'm equally invested in the face that's in front of the camera and the wardrobe. So it's you don't have any of these silly high fashion things or anything like that. It's good, solid. I think Peter Lindbergh's probably a really, really awesome exponent of fashion portraiture. So is someone like Annie Leibovitz. Her images maybe don't always have a very strong fashion feel to it, but she's so interested. And it's always a celebrity face and a celebrity personality and telling a story. So this is more the domain of fashion portraiture. Characters are real for me and less retouched in fashion portraiture, I think. So this is where the 5DS for me really excels, because it's slightly noisy, it's slightly broken, as I did explain earlier on, and it's just, for me, it talks about the human soul more than a perfect sensor. And this is where I really, really love the mood of fashion portraiture. So something like this, they call this guy Dr. Duplessis, which, as you can hear, Doctor, and his surname, because they think he's an absolute genius. This man at the jazz festival in, was it Berlin? There's a big worldwide jazz festival in one of the German cities, and some big world famous jazz band was up on stage, and they said, something's happened to our pianist. Is there anyone that can come and jam with us? And anyone that knows jazz, it's probably the most difficult genre to be accomplished in, and this guy can just get up and he can just do it. And they were so impressed that they invited him back the next week. They flew him back to Europe to come and record on their next album with them. So he's brilliant. And that's where the little hammers from the piano, I looked at it and I said, you know, Charles, I don't want to do the same thing. Everyone's seen someone sitting in front of a piano 1,000 times before. But they call you the doctor. So I want you to take the guts of the piano out. I want you to put it on top. I want to see something different. I don't want to do something cheesy that we've all seen before. And I think that is a really good indication of fashion portraiture, of the two meeting. I think something like this also is, you asked earlier on about posing with men, and this is one thing that I will do very often in my male shots, is I'll fold the arms with an open arm with the sleeve rolled up. And the reason is, even if you're unexercised or a little bit flabby, when you do that, creates these little muscles. It creates these strong arms that can hold you. It's very, very masculine to do the folded arms. Easy cheat. The same character, but in this one, I decided to make the music bigger than him. I decided to make him this crazy genius. The wardrobe almost disappears here, but his piano is so much bigger than him. The mission speakers next to him is so much bigger than him. The writings, he's almost given up on it. And there's rules in photography about what you do with hands. And I broke all of the rules over there because the man's got 100 fingers when he sits in front of the piano. So I wanted to create, usually you try and hide the hands or make them more elegant or pretty or don't show them towards the camera. Over here it was like, no, I just want fingers everywhere. So you've got to relax the arms like that, and I just need to see all of these fingers. The beauty of fashion portraiture for me, I can talk about the person along with the wardrobe. Something like this. This over here, I was on a TV show, shooting a TV show, and this person is no one, but her mother was the producer of the show. So when the big money comes in and the big money says, I've got a daughter and she wants to be a model. And she felt for me like the young American brat starlet kind of mood by saying to her mother, look, we're on the set. This is your background. I don't know your daughter, but I know what you do, and she might be there one day. Let's do this. Just using the locations, it says so much about the person. It's so rich by talking about people, where they come from, and that, again, fashion portraiture, absolutely love it. Love the meeting of the two worlds. So choosing your locations very carefully, super important. Something like this is incredibly popular nowadays. So this is sort of a typical, almost Annie Leibovitz style of the big, soft light that she pumps in. You always see her on set, and the assistants have always got the big octabox on the candy stick, getting that big, full window light blowing all over the place. And that's really filtered down now into just your more private commission shoots and works. You'll see a lot of it that's become popularized. Earlier on, I said that what happens in a lot of commercial fashion will eventually filter down. So I think this is just a good example of creating the type of light that feels like a bit of a Hollywood set. Two very simple lights. So the Deep XL umbrella. I don't know any of you if you know the Pro Photo gear. I think the Deep XL is probably about that size and about that deep. Beautiful soft light. And then one of my favorite easiest cheats always is just to chuck a light up against the ceiling. Over here, this is on a 50 mil. That's on the 50. I've used my 85. I used to love that lens. I didn't shoot anything without that lens. But in the last 2 years, 50, 35, I'm really starting to enjoy the wider angles, not worrying too much about any form of rules and strictness. But I think that's a wonderful cheat, is the one open head going up straight, bouncing off of the ceiling and just letting it flood the space. And you'll find that this is a little bit harsh because I wanted it to be deliberate. But in commercial work, just that little bit of rim that's just atmospheric, that's falling down onto the studio, it makes such a big difference to your work. I think that's top tip of the day, is just the open head, straight onto the ceiling and let it fall all over the space. You don't need to set up usually for that type of thing. You'll scrim the whole top of the set and you'll put 2 or 3 heads through that. That is a huge, huge effort to accomplish that. Simple. Just make sure that the open part of the flash isn't directed towards the models, that they're protected, and just put it up there. Beautiful window light mood to it. Okay. Something like this, again, on lighting, very, very deliberate. 1 magnum reflector over here. So this is going, it's still within fashion portraiture, but we're on the street over here. The 1 light is incredibly deliberate. I want it to feel like the paparazzi is chasing him. It adds the edge. If that light wasn't there, then it would just be someone walking down the street. But because I hit him really hard with the light going through the streets, you get that paparazzi feel. And again, it's just all upstairs. It's just the moods that you're infusing into it. He is a celebrity, and I wanted it to feel like that. I wanted him to feel chased. Same as this type of thing, HSS, high-speed sync. Once again, such a dramatic character. He hardly ever laughs. He hardly ever smiles. He's a wonderful, warm person, but he's got a very heavy character. So high-speed sync it, cut the whole background down by really killing the light in the background with high-speed sync. So I'm shooting here probably at about a 4,000th of a second or something like that, really to cut the landscapes right down. So for those of you that don't shoot with high-speed sync, it's not all about freezing action. It can also be used subtly in your portraiture to manipulate emotions and feelings. Wedding photography. Fashion portraiture. All it is. That bride is, I mean, none of us like wedding photography. Some of us do, but a lot of people always say, oh, it's the last thing I want to do. It's fashion portraiture. That's all it is. And you can treat it like that, and you can get some wonderfully exciting results out of your wedding photography. Once again, going through the glass down at the bottom over here, always just love adding in a layer to remove yourself. Again, fashion portraiture. Nothing too interesting about this. I just wanted to finish off on weddings and how fashion does come into it, and it can be treated like fashion. And I want to close off. This is the last slide, but I'm closing off on this slide very specifically because you pretty much don't see any wardrobe over here. You can see she's wearing something, but I was more interested in the mood than the clothes. And I think I wanted to finish on this because just to take home with you and remember that it's not always just about the wardrobe. Read the situation. Fashion is about a mood, how it makes you feel wearing it. It's fun, it's emotional, it's so many things outside of just clothing. This is probably about a half an hour after sunset, something like this. So you can still bump up this. It's probably about 3,000 ISO, 4,000, 5,000 ISO, somewhere around there, long after sunset. Shoot, enjoy it. It's beautiful light. That's about it for tonight, folks. Any final questions? Thank you. So I think I've probably spoken far too long. So if there's any final questions that haven't been answered. Yes, sir. It adds a lot. It adds a lot. There's as much detail in shadow as what there is in light, and how you manipulate the two. Like the shot of that midday sun, putting the shadows into the eyes and the mouth and everything like that. I love working with shadow, always. It gives a lot of definition. I'll choose my light shaper for the type of shadow that I want. Some light shapers, like a big deep XL umbrella, it's got a very long penumbra, very soft fall off to it, so it hasn't got crisp, sharp shadows and things like that. So judging by the mood of what I want to create, that's where you go smaller shapers to bigger shapers, but shadow is just as important. Love shadow, always working with shadow, always looking for it. Yes, sir? I didn't. I'm getting too old to talk about depth of field anymore, man. I think depth of field for me, I used to insist on only shooting below 2.8. And I used to be so angry when the fashion magazines, for a cover, they insist that you don't shoot anything below 5.6 because they want it sharp from the tip here to behind the ear. They want to read all of that over there. And I used to have so many fights with them because you're destroying my mood. You're destroying my shallow depth of field. It's become less important to me now, I think. I won't say less important, but it's become so much a part of what you do that you set the tonality through the depth of field. There's that new 50mm 1.2 on the EOS R mount. Because of the changed flange distance and what they've managed to do with the glass at the back, it's not a macro lens, but you can come right in like that. Whoa, man, it's a beautiful piece of glass that. I'm super excited, super excited. Yes, ma'am.
What inspired you to take a fashion photography as your mentor profession?
People, I think. So I ran an ad agency for many years. As I said earlier, I grew up and my father was involved in photography, but all I ever saw were poor photographers that couldn't pay their bills at the end of the month. And my dad would always tell me, oh, struggling to get the money out of these people. And the photographers would always say, oh, we got no money. And I looked at this and I'm never going to be a photographer. I don't want to be a photographer. So I started an ad agency, and I ran an ad agency to fly across the country, to have my meetings with the clients, to get onto a plane, to come back home. And I got into bed and I thought, I hate this. I don't like this. And I think I realized at that point that photography was always genuinely my passion. It had just been put into me. And I started, the very first thing that I did, I said to my friends, bring me the worst people you can think of. A lot of fashion photographers think that fashion's about starting out with a young model that's built like that and that's perfectly shaped everywhere, that can do everything a model does. I said to my friends, bring me people that are overweight, that are depressed, that need a pick-me-up, that look terrible, that feel terrible, that bring me anyone like that, anyone like that. And I think the first lady that came to me, she, if it is possible, she was shorter than me, and she was quite overweight, and she ended up crying by the end of the shoot. And I realized the beautiful power that it has to make someone feel good about